What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the Sixers Digest YouTube channel. My name is Barnard, as always, and today I'm here to break down Tyrese Maxey speaking out and giving his thoughts on the James Harden situation as a whole and the outlook from here. He spoke on his Maxey on the Mic podcast, which is presented by iHeartMedia. I will say I'm loosely a co-worker of Tyrese Maxey. I also work for iHeartMedia, and I'm on the airwaves over at Fox Sports 102.5 The Gambler here in Philadelphia. I don't know if Maxey quite views that exactly the same way, but I'm gonna take that for what it's worth. But let's dive into fully what Tyrese Maxey had to say. I do want to jump into these quotes. These were pointed out by Sam DiGiovanni, who covers the Sixers through Clutch Points, does some awesome work, one of the best writers in the game right now. And his quote here just saying, Tyrese Maxey discussed the Sixers James Harden situation on the podcast, called him a good friend and mentor, and said that James is, quote, doing something for a reason, and you just have to sit back and understand what he's doing as a friend and a teammate. So cool that he kind of has that outlook on it here. I did want to dive into some more quotes. These were also brought up by Sam here. Maxey, quote, I'm preparing right now to play with or without him, and there's no love lost. I love James to death. If he decided he was going to come back and play for us, I think there's nobody in the organization that would be upset about that. Maxey also said, people ask him if Harden not returning would make this season a wash. His reply is that the Sixers can't adopt that view and that they just have to raise their game. Quote, we have talent. We have the reigning MVP on our team. We have to go out there and expect to win. All great things of him to say. The biggest takeaway that I want to point out from this is the positive view on James Harden from an organizational standpoint. I do think that is the case, that for the most part, we've seen players remain quiet on this. So there has not been much speaking aside from James Harden, obviously, him taking headlines and him making his quotes. Daryl Morey has been pretty reserved in the situation, which he is probably the best option, and he kind of has to at this point in time. But for the most part, Sixers have not commented on the issue as a whole. So Tyrese Maxey kind of extending that olive branch, making it known that there's no hard feelings between James. There is a business aspect of the NBA that is different from the on-court thing. I think there's probably would be a much different conversation if the question was just purely, do you want James Harden back versus do you want to put up with this whole nonsense that is going to come with him? And that's the unfortunate reality. I also think it's important to note that by the letter of the law at this point in time, James Harden is under contract with the Sixers and expected to attend training camp. So it would not be the best move to kind of throw some, I guess, gasoline on the fire and make him more frustrated by saying that he wouldn't be welcome back, because I think there's a legitimate chance that day one of training camp, James Harden is still expected to walk in there. So good on Tyrese Maxey to kind of extend that thing. The other thing that I want to point out is Tyrese Maxey, more than anyone on this entire Sixers roster, his job will be dictated by whether or not James Harden is there or not. Let's say James Harden is to leave, and I want to look at some of the stats that these Sixers will have to replace here. And I want to pull this up here. Here is the exact stats that the Sixers will need to replace with James Harden. 21 points per game, 6.1 rebounds, 10.7 assists, which led the NBA, 0.5 blocks, 1.2 steals, 3.4 turnover, shot 44.1% from the field, and 38.5% from three. That number on three-point percentage is the highest that he's seen in over a decade, that it ties with the number that he produced while still with the Oklahoma City Thunder. Some of that is a show of efficiency, the volume coming down from the days with Houston where he was throwing up 13-plus three-pointers on a night on a regular basis. So some of that is shot selection that I think has genuinely helped him. We've seen him be more willing off the catch and shoot, which has also aided the production. Something he looks extremely uncomfortable with when he first came to Philadelphia is he could not catch and shoot, and it has not been a part of his game for several years. But I do think last year that he took some real strides forward in that area and was able to connect on a high level. So that is good. But the assist number, that 10.7 assists, is the biggest thing that will need to be replaced. I do think Tyrese Maxey is going to take a scoring leap no matter what. He's already producing at a very high level in that department, that the guy is a certified bucket getter. But from a playmaking standpoint, who is going to run the offense is the biggest question for these Sixers if James Harden is no longer on roster. That does circle back to Tyrese Maxey and the overall question of what is his NBA future from a positional standpoint. Is there a world where he continues to develop as a true point guard, where he's capable of running an offense, making the right reads, setting guys up off the pick and roll or in the flow of play? Or is it a world where he should just stick to doing what's best? And what is best for Tyrese Maxey is scoring the basketball. That this is a guy that is an assassin from the outside, one of the premier three-point shooters across the entire NBA, which is wild to say considering when he first came in the NBA, the knock on him coming out of Kentucky was that he wasn't a good enough shooter. To flash forward 2 seasons, and he's third in the NBA in three-point percentage by shooting 42.7% from beyond the arc is ridiculous. And then for him to take that percentage even higher last year while having more of a volume, that's incredibly impressive. That just does not happen except if you're Tyrese Maxey. And to pair that with a guy who's arguably the quickest downhill driver in the entire game, who has a wide-ranging layup package, who can finish around the rim, has a number of unique spins off the backboard that he's capable of knocking down and completing on a regular basis, as well as a little mid-range shot that he's able to step up into. And the threat of both getting to the basket and stepping back and shooting a three basically gives that to him for the taking on a possession-by-possession basis. So he does have the full package when it comes to scoring the basketball. But if that is what his best option is, if he's going to kind of fill more of an Allen Iverson type mold where he's a guy that is always going to be score first, that is what his best aspect is, there's going to need to be a guy that can step in and play make. One name that I do want to bring up and I think is important and shouldn't be lost in the entire translation of this offseason is Patrick Beverley. No, I'm not saying Patrick Beverley is the long-term point guard of the future for the Sixers, but it is a little bit of reassurance that Patrick Beverley is on roster, that if Tyrese Maxey's not picking up the slack from a playmaking standpoint, you can throw Patrick Beverley on the floor alongside him and have that taken care of. No, Patrick Beverley is not going to light things up from a statistical standpoint on a night-by-night basis, but he is a guy who I trust and the Sixers should trust to make the right reads on the court, to make his impact felt, and just keep things flowing right. He's a guy who knows the sport of basketball very well, is a high IQ basketball player, and defensively can pick up some of the slack that Maxey might not be able to. I would like to point out that I think Tyrese Maxey's development on the defensive end is far advanced than people give him credit for. He absolutely was a brutal defender coming in the NBA, and some of it still sticks that he's a guy that's always going to be a little bit undersized, always a little bit on the smaller side, but he's gone far and away in terms of development when it comes to his body position, the way he reads things in the flow of play, stopping things before they happen, and being willing to pick up guys for that full court. I think Patrick Beverley is going to further help on this development, improve Tyrese Maxey in this area, but I think that's an awesome option for these Sixers to have, that if Tyrese Maxey cannot step up and fill this role, that there is a guy there that could help pick up that kind of slack. And the last thing, as I mentioned, that Tyrese Maxey, more than anyone, has his role dictated by whether or not James Harden is here. I wanted to take a look at the splits on and off the court with Harden and without him. Now, these aren't perfect, and for the people doing the math here, there were some games that both Maxey and Harden did miss. They both picked up a foot injury around the same time in midseason, so this doesn't add up to 82 here. But in the 47 games that Maxey played with James Harden, averaged 19 points, 3 assists, 2.7 rebounds, shot 48.6% from the field, and 43.4% from three. In the 13 games he played without James Harden, averaged 24.8 points per game, 5.4 assists, 3.8 rebounds, shot 46.9% from the field, and 43.3% from three. The biggest thing I think people should pay attention to is that percentage and volume when it comes to the shooting splits. We see with James Harden, his just 14.0 field goal attempts per game versus without him 19.7. We do see the efficiency slip a little bit without Harden, and the three-point numbers look great on both sides. That the either 43.4 or 43.3, we're not going to nitpick that, but the 5.8 with Harden and 7.5 without Harden are worth noting. And the assist numbers, you see them nearly double without Harden, which is a very good sign. So I did want to bring that up. That's too small of a sample size to fully make a conclusion on, but good signs nonetheless. And I do expect Tyrese Maxey to be taking a stride forward. He also mentioned on the podcast that he's currently working with both Drew Hanlon and Chris Johnson, who's been his longtime trainer. He also does some work with Tim Martin, who's another highly reputable NBA training and skills coach. He mentioned that he wants to have both Drew Hanlon and Chris Johnson on the podcast. I would love to see that. I would love to see a deep dive into what they're working on. One of the things Nick Nurse talked about when he first took over was giving Tyrese Maxey more opportunities to make live reactions, to make the decisions within the flow of play. These are all great signs for what this is happening. So, and another just cool quote from Maxey in the episode that I did want to pull up here, just to show the maturity that this kid has, and just kind of a full circle moment for how much this kid has been through already. But quote from Maxey is, quote, "It's crazy to say this, but it's not our first rodeo when it comes to the James Harden trade request." So this man has been through a lot in a short amount of time with the Sixers, still just 22 years old. And if you think towards the transition and just developmental track of Tyrese Maxey, that he was really aided by the Ben Simmons holdout situation. If you think back to the Tyrese Maxey just career path, that he came in as a rookie, was really limited in terms of opportunity. Doc Rivers had him on a very short leash and did not trust him. We know that was the reputation of Doc Rivers, that he did not give opportunities to young players, and Tyrese Maxey fit this mold. Then flash forward one season in Maxey's second year in the league, and we get the Ben Simmons holdout of him refusing to show up to camp. And by default, this creates a need for guard minutes, of ball-dominant guard minutes. And Tyrese Maxey was the number one guy to step up. And this is where we start to see those superstar flashes from Maxey, of him filling this role, him having his special moments. Then James Harden comes in midseason. He takes a bit of a backseat in terms of his opportunity, with James Harden stealing the show when it comes to ball dominant moments. And now look at it, how it is we have an opportunity to see this all over again. If James Harden steps out of the way, that this could truly be Tyrese Maxey's time to shine. Maybe the transition is not James Harden to the star they trade for, but maybe it's just handing more opportunity to Tyrese Maxey, and that could be enough in situations for these Sixers. And regardless of how you feel about James Harden, about as a player, as a star, and a guy who demands these type of trades, he is a terrific role model for Tyrese Maxey to learn from an on-court standpoint. That there are very few players, that there are single-digit players who are as gifted offensively as James Harden is. Very few players who have led the NBA in both scoring and assists. A guy that's been an MVP, who is one of the most offensively skilled games of all time, a guy who has been able to do this on a scale that just no one has been able to match. And those prime Houston years are things that we will likely never see again, just as far as the high caliber, the high volume, and high efficiency that Harden was able to produce. So to have that as a guy of Tyrese Maxey being able to watch on a day-by-day basis, see the way he processes the game, see the way he goes through reads, these are going to be very beneficial for him in the long haul. And lastly, I just think it's very cool of Maxey to kind of be going out there and controlling the narrative of these Sixers' perspective on the James Harden thing. As I mentioned earlier on, for the most part, the team has been very quiet regarding things. There's been a couple of quotes that have leaked out, catching up with Joel Embiid at a red carpet event. B-Ball Paul has been caught up on a couple events, getting some quotes there. But for the most part, guys have stayed silent. So it's cool for Maxey to be one of the voices pushing the narrative from the team's perspective, them still sharing open arms, which is the right decision based on that is not a closed door for him coming back. And I just think it's another step forward when it comes to Tyrese Maxey growing into the face of this franchise in a way that is happening far more rapidly than I think anyone expected. He is that guy. He's everything that Sixers fans could possibly hope for from an on-court and off-court perspective. He brings a shine and energy and just a personality that is necessary on this team. And that's all paired with one of the most skilled basketball players on the entire roster. So shout out to Tyrese Maxey for truly being the bright light of this franchise. Shout out to you guys for tuning in and watching this video. If you have not already, make sure to drop a like on this video. Drop a subscribe on the channel. 95% of you guys have not subscribed yet. So I'm trying to get that number up, trying to get that changed a little bit, and you guys can help me out by doing that. Make sure to ring that bell so you're not missing out on any content from here. And I'll be right with you every step of the way, breaking down the updates within the Sixers organization. Appreciate you guys once again, and I will talk with you next time. Peace.